Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leathercraft. Chapter 6 of making a leather gun holster. Could not be happier. Look at that fit. How clean is that? And right here, that is spot on. Literally could not have measured that better. All right, Chapter 6. Going to be a short chapter because we're going to add dye, let that dry, add an antique, dry, top coat, dry. But what we're looking for here is ease and outcome. We're wet formed, so we could certainly add dye with a sponge or a dauber, but we're going to dip dye, ease, and you're going to be surprised at the consistent dye. Outcome, that's all we're looking for. Now, anything I use in this video, dyes, leather, tools, weaverleathercraft.com, or check below. We've got links that are going to take you straight to the website. So let's step over here and add some dye. Now, dyeing leather does not have to be expensive, time-consuming, or messy. But there are a couple of notes. In fact, we'll go over those while I put on my gloves. First off, I've got just a basic trash bag, plastic trash bag. That's going to protect my tabletop or work surface. But when we dye on this, the dye gets slippery, it pools, it becomes a big mess. But a simple, cheap piece of paper on top of that cures that problem completely. Now, we're going to dip dye. The only reason we can do that is the Fiebing's Pro Dye. That's an alcohol carrier, but it's an oil-based dye stuff. Makes all the difference in the world. Now, with this, my boss is going to say, Chuck, could you literally not spend $3 on a new bin for our video? No, this is my tried and true. Easy cleanup, but at the same time, when I'm done dyeing, I can store my dyes, in fact, all my liquids in this. If I have a cap that's not on, no problem. It's not going to make a mess. All right, so with this is just a small hook. We can make this out of coat hanger or baling wire. And what I'm going to do is simply hook this on. Got my dye in here, and I'm just going to drop that in just about 2 seconds. There we go. Let's tap that on the edge. There we go. All right, let's lay that aside. There we go. All right, second piece. Same thing. We don't want to run it through too fast, but at the same time, not too slow. All right, there we go. Dyed and ready. Now, I can certainly run a rag across that, but you'll notice by the time I can get a rag there, the dye's already absorbed. Now, with our holster, again, I'm going to drop this in for just about 2 seconds. Roll that over. Get that wet with dye. Now, let's pull this out. Let that drain briefly. Now, I'm going to hold this with my fingers so I don't have my glove on the outside. Now, let's rub that down just right off. Get that excess dye off of there. All right, there we go. All right, that's going to look good. Now, with our gun, I've got my gun wrapped in a baggie. Easy enough. Now, let's force this down into our holster. It's already wet formed, but let's work that in. In fact, let's come back out, open that mouth or that throat up just a little bit for our rear sight. Force that down in there. Oh, look at that. Press. And there we go. All right, that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to leave the gun in the holster for about 3 hours, maybe around 2. Take the gun out, let it dry inside. So let's simply lay that right there if that's going to work. There we go. It's best if I don't lay that down. Let's kind of let it sit up. In fact, I may lean that just a little bit more. There we go. All right, let's give that about 3 hours to dry. All right, giving our holster about 3 hours to dry. Look how consistent that is. Ease and outcome, just what we're looking for. Now, while this dried, save us some time. I've cleaned off our hardware just with a simple rag. That dye comes right off. But also, too, I've cleaned my bin, simple paper towel, and I've used a funnel to get my dye from my bin back in my bottle. So really, the outcome there, dye on nothing but our project, our gloves. You know what? A little bit on our paper, but that is no issue. Easy to do. Okay, we're going to add an antique now. This is going to highlight. It's going to sink into the cracks and natural blemishes on our leather. It's going to make this gorgeous, but it's a little bit of a mess. This is a mess. Okay, so what I don't want is antique wrapping around to the back of my leather. So I'm going to take some simple painter's tape. I'm going to drop this on my project, both sides. Then to save us some time, I'll do this off camera, but I'm just going to trim around my edge. Same right here. And then on our holster, I'm going to drop some tape right here and then around our throat. This isn't really like a dye. It's not going to wick. But we'll add this with a dauber, and this will be gorgeous. All right, there we go. Now, again, it's not going to wick like dye. So just to my edge, but the only reason we're doing that is so we can darken our edge with the antique. We're going to come back with a gum trag and slick that. That'll darken it. I just don't want light spots along my edge. Want it to be consistent. Now, with this literally is the last stop in my shop for rags and gloves because this can be a mess. All right, so let's start right here. Now, like I said, this is more like a gel. So let's take a bit of this. Now, with this, I'm going to rub this kind of circular fashion because I want my antiquing down in every crack, every stamp, and even in my stitch line. And on our groove line over here, it's really going to make that stand out. So let's get some on our dauber. There we go. All right, we're going to rub that in. Now, what I want to do is just cover a small area. Then I'm going to take a rag and let's rub away from the direction we're going. There we go. And let's move a little bit fast here because I don't want this to dry anywhere, thus creating a darker spot, which really doesn't happen that often unless we're using a real dark color. All right, let's rub in the direction we came from. There we go. Looking good thus far. Darkening, but it's going to lighten a little bit as it dries. All right, so I'm going to do the rest of the face, and then we're going to work on our edge and our other two straps. All right, well, that looks good. Really making our design stand out. There we go, better view of it. Now, here and there, I've got a little hole where I might need just a little more, but easy enough to drop that in. There we go, and simply wipe that back off. All right, there we go. That looks great. Okay, let's work on our edges. And there we go. Okay, so our holster done. All right, love the antique. Very good. Now, still a little flat. Once we add our top coat, that color is going to pop. Now I'm going to step over and work on our straps. Now with these, I want to make sure I get my antique down in our groove lines. And let me get this one done and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. There we go. Flip this around. Yeah, like I said, I want to move rather quickly while I'm on my face here, just so antique doesn't pull and leave a darker stain. But now we can really see that groove line. Looks like I might need just a little bit more in that corner. Easily done. So drop that in and wipe that off. All right, so I'm going to do the edges on this and then front and edges on this strap. And there we go. All right, our last strap. Let's just clean off the edges, and sometime with this, it's probably a good idea maybe to clean off my left-hand glove, just so as I'm holding this, I'm not actually applying more antique to that. But those look good. Couldn't be happier with that little strap. All right, so with the antique, we're going to give that maybe about, let's say, a half an hour. Let's give this a half an hour to dry. Then we're going to come back, drop on a top coat, and we are ready to assemble. All right, ample time there for that to dry. Well, the antique looks nice. Very cool. All right, so we're going to jump over to a top coat. This is a leather balm with atom wax. It's one of my favorites because, first off, no ventilation required. It actually smells good. But secondly, we're just going to rub this on and then buff it off. The one trick, though, I want to get as much coverage as I can on my surface so that, you know what, we don't have streaking. Let's don't add streaking now. So with a simple cotton rag, I'm going to get some leather balm on that, wick that a little bit on the edge, and now let's just get our entire holster one pass. There we go. Okay, now let's set that aside. In fact, you know what? Let's go back to this rag because let's just wipe off some of that excess before we go to our final rag. And this is just cotton rag. Try to get a little more in there. There we go. All right. Now let's wipe that off. Very good. Okay, now let's jump over to a dry cotton rag. Now I'm going to buff. And now, it always freaks me out because it goes very matte to begin with. But as long as I keep going, 15, 20 seconds, Look at that. That is really starting to look good. Okay, I'm going to buff the rest of this holster. Then we'll jump over to our 2 straps. There we are. All right, does that not look clean and professional? Very cool. All the way around. Look at that gloss. Now, we're down to about a medium brown, maybe a little bit darker. So our light brown dye with our antique and then our top coat is going to darken. But we're going to give that about 15 or 20 minutes to dry. It's going to lighten up just a little bit. So let's step over to our straps. Going to do the same thing over here. Now you'll notice we haven't added any antique or any top coat to the inside of our holster. The dye, the carrier there, alcohol carrier, but oil-based dye stuff, that alcohol has evaporated out. But I don't want antique, or I don't want a top coat. I don't want that against my gun. The dye, no real issue. And a little buffing on our last piece. Look at that. Boy, that looks clean and professional. Just what we're looking for. Easy to do. Dye, antique, and top coat. All right. Follow me to chapter 7. That is our last chapter. Pop out our stitch line. Resew it. Set our hardware. And this holster is complete.